What does Little Nightmare's Secrets of the Maw hide off camera from the player in the Hideaway and Residence areas? In this game, we must endure and survive throughout an eerie vessel, as everything on the ship tries to end our life in the process. This game in its original state is dark, so when we brain things up, we're going to find lots of cool hidden things. Along the way, we'll be breaking the game quite a bit too. So I hope you enjoyed this breakdown of the Hideaway and the Residence. As always, I like to do a very quick recap that will help everyone to remember the game as much as possible. So being a puzzle adventure game, initially we play as a little girl named Six. We must escape the Maw, which is this gigantic water vessel full of monstrous-like characters. However, as this story unfolds with Six, another is taking place deep in the lower levels of the Maw, which includes the Depths, the Hideaway, and the Residence. Here we play as the Runaway Kid, who also has a strong desire to escape this, well, little nightmare. Playing as the kid, we're unable to defend ourselves, being potentially vulnerable to some intense deaths. But with some quick and keen decision making, we shall prevail. So we just put Granny out of her misery, only to be captured shortly after by the Janitor, concluding the Depths section. It's here where we'll load in, only to discover that we're locked up in a cage right alongside Six. The camera will pan out while the Janitor grabs our cage and drags us off screen, with the screen eventually fading to black. Pausing the game and getting a different view will reveal that the Janitor doesn't load in right away during this scene. Immediately becoming sidetracked, I began venturing out of bounds, finding that the previous area was still loaded in. We can see the Janitor's lonesome arms just hanging out as they contemplate their life choices. With the previous section still being here, I realized that it's actually after the short cutscene that we end up loading into the next section. However, if we watch this cutscene unfold from this angle, you'll see the Janitor simply loads in as he creepily reaches for the kid. Nothing surprising happens here, as the Janitor will just continue to drag us onto this empty platform, with the loading screen eventually cutting us off. This follows with a scene where we can see the kid was bagged up as he makes his escape. However, before taking a closer look at that, we can now see that we've loaded into the next section, as I attempt to get a better look at the entirety of this layout. As I was coming back to where we currently are, it took a moment, but I realized that the kid could be found laying on this pile of coal. This is where we land as we break out of the bag and endure a nasty fall. This prompted me to go back over the bag we initially came out of, and as you can see, there are, in fact, multiple models of the Runaway Kid during this scene. Going in for a closer look within this bag reveals an uncomfortable situation. It's the kid, all contorted within here. It's painful to look at as multiple parts of the kid's body are twisted about, including his feet, arms, and hands. His torso seems to be warped, along with the arms clipping through it as well. Watching the kid escape from this view is something like out of an alien movie. The kid bursting out of the bag as a xenomorph would from a human chest. Once he gets out, he falls as he attempts to grab onto this pipe. After losing his grip, he'll continue to fall and break through this board. It's here where we can see the other model of the kid that's on the ground slide to the back of the coal pile, as the other one continues to fall, clipping through the floor. I lost sight of him, but realized that his body ends up teleporting here, where he remains in this fixed falling position. Forever lost in the void, never to be seen again. Well, at least this model of him, that is. I'm not entirely sure why the other model of the kid slid back the way he did, because normally, when the camera moves down after the fall, he is found in the center of the coal, as our little gnome friends approach him. It's visibly clear that he's out of place in this instance though. The following section involves running around with these little guys, as we have to interact with them in certain situations, like opening doors for example. We can see gnomes in the background fleeing from the kid, eventually disappearing entirely, as this other one slides into position while in a T-pose. What I found more interesting though was how these particular gnomes make their way through this door as we enter the room. Watching them squeeze through this door from this perspective is goofy looking. The body assumes its position as the head blasts through shortly after, immediately disappearing. There is another gnome that will end up getting stuck in the door, whom we have to assist and pull out. Taking a closer look while this little guy is stuck in the door reveals another gnome that is clipping through the ground. As it, I honestly don't know what it's doing, but it's funny looking. I delete the floorboards and try the same with the grid material underneath, but unfortunately, this crashed the game. After reloading the game though, I notice the gnome on the ground doesn't appear until we grab the gnome stuck in the door. Furthermore, moving the camera reveals a platform labeled with text that states, "is swapped with stuck gnome," where this stuck gnome is waiting to be swapped. Deleting the door shows how the gnome moves from the platform and to the spot, but it's not until we pull the gnome out completely that the swapping of the gnome is complete. As you can see though, this little guy just continuously bounces. It sort of looks like he's tickling himself repeatedly, as his hands continuously open and close. So proceeding onward, a lot of the upcoming area doesn't have much going on off camera and behind the scenes. It involves a lot of freedom being given to these poor little gnomes we come across though. Saving the gnomes is the only way to progress, but it was here where I found an extra staircase underneath the one we actually use, which was interesting. Eventually we get to this giant furnace that will end up turning on, and the gnomes will then begin grabbing coal and throwing it into the furnace continuously. The objective here is to get more gnomes to join our cause, so we can get this contraption running. From this view we can see this bad boy is pretty big, which would explain the need for so much coal. Moving on, as we're saving these gnomes, we'll see a similar setup with this particular one that is stuck in the coal, as the energetic, bouncy model stands by out of bounds, waiting to swap with this one in the coal. Once doing that, we're then tasked with finding a battery. After, we unintentionally fry one while pulling this lever. It's in the next, very dark room that we come across the good old janitor once again. However, taking away the darkness allows us to see the janitor spawn in, which is still terrifying, but honestly, as long as we tiptoe, we'll be fine. Doing this following section is a tad easier with our nice brightened view of course, but nothing is really going on out of bounds here. Eventually, we find our way into a room with exactly what we're looking for. Another battery. So, we make our way up, grab the battery, open the door, evade our long-armed friend, and then make a run for it before he catches on. The janitor will try to come after the kid, but clearly can't get through. Watching him retreat after his failed efforts will reveal that he just simply disappears eventually. We're now able to head up to the next area though, where a few more gnomes are in need of freedom. After retrieving these little fellas, I decided to go on another stroll with the camera, and that's when I came across the lady. She's just chilling in this elevator without her mask on. We won't encounter her in this elevator just yet though, as it's a little further into the game, but funnily enough though, we can find her mask down by our feet, which is sort of odd to see overall. After some good old teamwork, the gnomes and I make our way back to the furnace room, as my quest for gnomes continues. So we move across, then make our way up here, and come into this room where we need to jump on the floor until it breaks. Doing this follows with the janitor entering the room from a door in the back. Looking out of bounds shows that he appears once we break the floor, but that's when I spotted something really odd. The janitor's jacket appears to be hung up outside the level. I'm not entirely sure of the purpose for this, but here it is. While I was checking this out, I noticed a monkey that disappeared in my line of sight. That's when I realized that there are objects stored outside the room that correspond with what the janitor picks up and puts down. I even found a decapitated monkey toy way down below the map. In here though, we just need to evade the janitor once again and distract him by turning this on. We can then make our escape while he's distracted. So there's a body on the ground here that's full of rats, and they eventually scurry out. Getting a closer look at it shows that the rats are actually underneath the ground before appearing as if they came out of the body. Mind you, this part is actually normally pretty dark, making it hard to see this transpire to begin with. We can find a minecart out of bounds, which will end up swapping into the room as we lower the cart that's hanging in the middle of the room. Before doing that though, we need to free this little guy by jumping over and over until he hops off the shelf himself. I'd consider this gnome lucky, seeing as he comes out this fall without a scratch on him. Now we can make our way up here, lower the cart, and move on. Before doing so, we can check this room out with the all-seeing eye. Like security cameras, we're able to use this and observe other areas of the Maw, including areas that involve Six's adventure, which I thought was pretty cool when first playing through this. While checking this area out with the camera, I noticed a lever that is back behind the room we're currently in. Because I must know if it does something when pulling it, I decided to delete the wall, make my way back there, and pull away. Unfortunately, it does nothing. Well, to my knowledge, that is. So I leave disappointed, and I'm now tasked with retrieving a few more gnomes. As you can see, this is where we need to chase them through the coal, and I'll admit, sometimes they can be dodgy. We make quick work of these guys though, as I grab both of them, successfully getting out of this room, and then using teamwork to make the dream work. Eventually this leads back to the big furnace room, where we now have enough gnomes to get this machine running. We can see how this mechanism just generates from down below, but following it up shows how the level isn't fully loaded, as the bins are dumped and disappear. This is because of my player position, but most players will know that we take this ride up and eventually get off, as we don't want to get Toy Story 3'd. Pushing out from here, we begin to realize that there's a lot more gnomes on the ship than we initially thought, as we encounter even more. This leads into this little gnome family gathering. Between the visuals and music, I enjoyed this part. It made you really feel for all the characters in the game. Back behind this room though, we can find some random objects, along with some gnomes just floating about in this area. We can find a few more gnomes in a T-pose floating above the room we're in as well. Moving on eventually leads us to this elevator, which we had seen earlier before. Checking out the lady this time shows that she has her mask on, but we can see that there is still a mask at her feet as well, which I found curious. When the elevator began to move, I noticed that the lady's mask was no longer on her face, and it can be found down below still. Just how many masks does this lady have? The screen fades to black though, as we enter the final portion of the DLC. Starting off, we need to parkour out of this elevator shaft, but if we look within the elevator first, we'll see the lady is nowhere to be found. Taking a look at the entirety of this whole new section we're in shows that we're actually not too far from completing the DLC. However, shortly after getting out of the elevator shaft, we'll come across the lady with her back to us, as she listens to her music box. When I failed to sneak up on her, I had the game running at a slow speed, and as you can see, she proceeded to destroy me. However, if you remember from a previous chapter, if we're messing with the camera as our character dies, it will prevent the game from reloading us to our most recent checkpoint. In result, we'll see the kid fall to the ground as the lady continuously uses her power on her lifeless body. The lady has no remorse, and will do this until we restore our default camera. Anyways, there's a key here we must get once she's gone, so instead of waiting, I tried teleporting to it to see if I could snag it early. This resulted in death once again. So I decided to go full force this time, as I delete her from existence, climb this counter, and grab the key. Entering the next room, we can see we're now alone. These shadow children are going to be the main threat within this section. Progressing through this involves collecting 3 figurines that will end up needing to move forward. During the scavenger hunt is when we have our close encounters with these shadow children, and I gotta say, they are terrifying. Made out of a dark aura, the shadow kids are aggressive, childlike creatures created by the lady to guard her residence in the Maw. They hunger for one thing, our soul. So we must use our flashlight to keep them at bay. Holding the light on these fellows will eventually disintegrate them. There are 3 figurines that we need to collect, and we can actually see all 3 of them sitting out of bounds if we move out from this particular room. These ones floating out here probably function in a similar way to the other models we found earlier, if I had to guess, like the gnome swapping out and whatnot. Once we have all 3, we're able to move on. It's here where we once again run into the lady, checking herself out in a mirror. You can see in the reflection that she doesn't quite look the same, as she appears more homely and older. When we try to walk by her, she will see us, as she horrifyingly screams as the lights go out. Checking this out with this particular view mode shows that the reflection of her hasn't loaded in yet. But if we travel down below this area, we'll actually find the model that's used for the reflection in the mirror. Which, I couldn't help but start laughing at as I got closer to it. This lady granny hybrid is quite the sight if I'm gonna be honest. She'll just continue to touch her beautiful face with her gray soggy hands, basically mimicking the movement of the lady above, hence her reflection. This all works out though, as we wouldn't really be able to see that it's the granny's face in normal gameplay, so the developers could just safely reuse this. Rest in peace, Granny, I'll never forget you. It's at this point now that the lady begins pursuing us, so we make a run for it through this creepy dark room. From this view, it's not nearly as scary, but it allows us to see how she skates through objects during this scene, eventually disappearing. As this is happening, we can actually find the lady model that ends up getting us waiting in the upcoming room. So let's not keep her waiting, and evade these other ladies as we make our way to our inevitable demise. Most of you will know that the lady is about to come out of nowhere and turn this into the worst day ever for this kid. The screen will black out, only to reveal that she turned us into a gnome. Watching this unfold through this view is pretty painful to watch. During this, we can see the kid's arms, legs, and head begin to contort into his torso. Talk about a big nightmare. When the screen goes black, that's when the contorted kid is swapped with a gnome, along with the kid's clothes on the ground. The adventure from here takes an even sadder turn, as we realize we have lost our mobility overall. In an effort to escape, I teleported the gnome to the staircase, which in turn leads to a very predictable dead end. Deleting doors to avoid this awful fate that awaits us was also futile, as it leads nowhere. We do encounter a few guests throughout this part, but it's nothing we haven't seen before. They are still just as disgusting as our last encounter with MS6. This of course follows with the end, as we quickly come to the realization that we are not just any gnome. We are actually the most unlucky gnome in the game. However, the game fades to black as the credits roll. Once the credits are finished, we see a TV in a random room, which basically teases the second Little Nightmares game that was in the works at the time. We can actually find this room by its lonesome down below the level. I ended up bringing the gnome kid in here for his own safety. In this version of the story, I decided that he gets to live and not become a certain someone's dinner. But there you have it. This concludes our out-of-bounds journey through Little Nightmares Secrets of the Maw and the whole Little Nightmares game. I hope you all enjoyed this game-breaking adventure. Subscribe if you did, and I'll see you in my next one. Cheers!